David here with Figboot on Pens, back again with another video. Today, I have for you a video I have threatened to make on several occasions, and that would be a look at my favorite fountain pen sections. We all have our preferences when it comes to our pens, and if your preferences are different than mine, then there's nothing wrong with that. What works best for me might not work best for you, and the other way around. But what I'm going to highlight today is some of the sections that I don't particularly care for. I'll show you some of the quirkier sections in my collection, and then I'll share my top 10 list of favorite sections. Okay, let's get right to it, and in order to get a look at these pens, please join me over here at camera 2. Okay, just a note up top, this video is going to be about sections. So some of these might be my favorite pens overall, but then other ones aren't. And they just have a section that I really care for. So to begin with, I wanted to show you one that I don't care for. And this is from a company you probably haven't heard of, but I'm not saying anything bad about the pen, but the section was a good example of one that really didn't work. And that is a pen from a company called Shimmery. This was actually a prototype that they sent me, and for various reasons, I did not review it. That's a longer story for another day, but this section is one that I particularly did not care for. It is a slick metal section, and then it is just angled straight down. So whenever you're gripping this pen, your grip really has a tendency to just literally slide right off the pen. Then they also engraved not only one side, but both sides of this pen. So right where you would grip, they engraved it. And so it's actually a little bit uncomfortable. Not uncomfortable, but just you feel that engraving and it just doesn't feel quite right. So between the fact that they had this odd engraving on here and a slick metal section and no swale or anything like that for you to maintain your grip, overall, this was just a terrible section in my mind. Now, even though I don't particularly care for slick metal sections, just because a pen has a metal section doesn't mean it's terrible. And here's an example of that. This is a Visconti. This is the Opera Desert Springs. And this particular pen does have a metal section, but it does it a little bit better because it is a little bit on the slick side, but because it has that swale here at the end and that little flare, that at least for me, when I grip the pen towards the end of the section, that I'm able to maintain a good grip on this. And I just love this Desert Springs material. So just because it has a slick metal section doesn't necessarily mean that it can be bad, that there are certain design elements you can incorporate into that in order to make it that much better. Okay, next up, I wanted to talk a little bit about unique sections and show a couple examples of that. And the first unique section I have is from a artisan manufacturer, which is the Mad Science Pen Company, and the pen is the Beta Type R. And the section is right here. So you can see that the nib is recessed in there a little bit, and the section just flares out. And so it does have a rather unique look to it. But if this was a more traditional pen where the nib was out, it would be on the thick side, but overall it just has a really unique look. I do care for thicker sections, and so this one fits well as regard to size, and I like the flare in there. And so the combination of that and the nib being recessed really gives this pen a unique and different look. Then next up, in regard to unique sections, I have a pen from Kasama, actually two pens, which is a company that's based out of the Philippines, and the first one is the Una. And, well, actually, if I open the right part of it, and that is the section on the Una. And so you can see that it's a bit thicker in the front and then a swale in the middle. And so that it's just it sets your grip a little bit further back and it kind of forces your grip into that area. Now, I guess you could hold it a little bit further back, but it pretty much forces your grip into this little area here. And it's very comfortable to use. It doesn't necessarily look very traditional, but it is pretty comfortable. So this was the Una. And then they have a smaller version of this pen called the Tala. And so the Tala has the same type of section to a bit, where well, actually it's a little bit different because here we have just like basically a little indentation. In this one, we have a little bit more of a traditional section, but it's still a larger end here, and then you grip right here. And that this Ultim does a good job of helping you maintain a solid grip, but this one looks a little bit more traditional, but it's still a bit on the unique side. And if you could ever pick up a pen from Kasama, they are very much worthwhile. They tend to be very low production numbers and difficult to obtain, but I don't think that I've ever seen anyone who's been disappointed in any of their Kasama purchases. In this next section here, I wanted to talk about polarizing sections. Those are ones that some people love and some people despise. And to start off, wanted to talk about the Lamy All-Star. This is actually my very first fountain pen I purchased. And with the Lamy, it has a triangular grip, well, somewhat triangular, to where there are these grooves here on either side of the top, and you fit your fingers right there, and it really does a good job of indexing the pen. So if you're a new fountain pen user, then this does a really good job of helping you index that nib and keep the nib in the correct angle. But some people just don't like being told what to do. And with this particular pen, it pretty much forces your grip into one particular area. Now, you can go further back and closer up if you want, but it's pretty much stuck in that one particular spot, or else it's going to be a little bit more uncomfortable if you hold it differently. But I like it. It's something that I've always enjoyed. Just so you have a look at what it looks like, this is what it looks like on the Safari, if I can get the cap off of here. So here we have the solid resin section. Maybe I should have shown that one first, because you get a better look at what these ridges look like in the side. So it's rounded on the bottom, and then it has the ridges here up top, and it forces your grip into that position. I've always liked it, but like I said, some people don't like being told what to do, and don't particularly care for this somewhat triangular section. Next up, we have another pen from Lamy, which is one of my favorites. It's a pen that I really enjoy, mainly because it is so unique, and that would be the Lamy Dialogue 3. And with regard to this particular section, there really is no section. It's kind of, I've mentioned it a few times, it's kind of like writing with a hot dog. This is a very hot dog shaped pen. One thing that's kind of cool is that when you extend the nib, then that section, or actually the clip, recesses down slightly, and then you grip it like this, and that the clip can then help you index the nib. Now, again, some people don't like that particular aspect of it, and they don't like the fact that there really is no defined section here. But I find it very useful, or very nice to use, and comfortable in the hand. And so it's one that I enjoy using, but some people don't necessarily like the large aspect of it and the non-defined aspect of the section here, or lack thereof. A couple more to go. Next up, we have a pen from Pilot, which has a somewhat similar issue to that of the Lamy Dialogue 3, and that would be the vanishing point. The vanishing point has a clip here, and again, the nib retracts, and there is a little bit of an indentation here in the clip so that you end up holding it here, or you can hold it slightly out. You don't need to necessarily grip directly onto the clip, but again, it's a rather non-defined section, and there's a lot of people that don't particularly care for the clip here. I do have a friend who actually performs clipectomies, where she will remove the clips on vanishing points and then do the appropriate work to make sure that it looks okay here. But again, it's one that I care for and enjoy, but it is one that is polarizing because a lot of folks don't necessarily care for having something in the way there, especially if they have a non-traditional grip that gets in the way of that. Okay, two more polarizing sections, and this one is one of my favorite entry-level pens that is a bit difficult to find lately, and that would be the Faber-Castell Loom. This loom, I know we're talking just about sections, but this loom has one of the best stainless steel nibs, especially on an entry-level pen. So if you could find one, they're outstanding. But you can see in this section, it is very non-traditional to where it is rather thick and then just angles down slightly, and it has these ridges. Now, if it didn't have the ridges, then it probably wouldn't work as well as it does for me because it might be a little bit slick. But having those ridges there does do a good job of helping you maintain your grip. And so this is a real pleasure to use, not only because of this outstanding nib, but then I do like the uniqueness of this section as well. Finally, in the polarizing section area, we have another pen from Lamy. Seems like there's a lot of pens from Lamy in this section, and it is the iconic Lamy 2000. This is a pen that, first of all, I think looks fantastic. Even though this pen is almost 60 years old, it could have come out this week. It has an iconic design that even looks very modern, even though the pen is a bit on the older side. But as regards to this section, it does just taper down, and it is a metal section, but I don't find it to be slick, mainly because of the brushed treatment that's on here. So even though it is a brushed treatment going in this direction, as opposed to circular, I do find that it does keep my grip in a good place, and that I have a tendency to kind of creep down, and so I need to make it an intention to kind of keep a little bit further back on this, or else I kind of fall off the edge and slide down a little bit. But if you maintain your grip a little bit further back where it really should be, it's something that I don't have an issue with and very much enjoy. I like the unique look and feel to this pen, and like I mentioned, it's very iconic. Okay. Before I get into the top 10, I had 2 honorable mentions. As I mentioned before, these might not be my favorite pens, but I do appreciate the sections. And these are 2 pens from Ferris Wheel Press, and they are the Brush, which is the green one, and the Jewel, which is the blue one. And this Jewel is one that I'm going to be reviewing here in the next couple of weeks. But let me go ahead and show you this section. And the section is brass, and it just has a really neat ornamental design on there. I'm a sucker for a really cool nib imprint, and that I think that this section imprint is really cool as well. And even though it's brass, it does a good job as far as the design here of helping you maintain your grip. So you can maintain a solid grip on there, and I really appreciate the unique look of that. It's rather festive. And then in regard to the Jewel, which, like I said, I'll be reviewing in the near future, its section is a little bit different. Let's see if we can really see that here in this light. And that you can see that kind of has almost like a steampunk look to it. It's a little difficult to catch in this light. I'm trying to get it to where it's not so shiny. But again, it's just an interesting design. And I like the fact that they use the section as a design element of the pen, which not a lot of companies do. And again, the engraving here helps you maintain your grip on what could be a rather slick metal section. Okay, now to get in the meat and potatoes of this review, the top 10, and these are in no particular order, but first up on this list is one of my favorite sections, which would be on the Matthew Martin OG Chonk. First of all, it is a very chonky pen, and I think that that's a very cool name for this pen. But as you see here, that it has a very thick section with this really cool spiral design on here. So as you twist it around, you can see the spiral, and that again, it's a metal section, but having those grooves in there really helps you maintain a solid grip. And that I do like how thick the section is. It is basically appropriate to the size of the overall pen, which is nice. And whenever I see it, I just like it because it's just a unique design that I don't have on any other pen in my collection. And I just think it's cool. Next up, we have a pen from Omas, and that would be the Vintage 360. This one here is in turquoise. And while the Lamy Safari and the All-Star kind of had a pseudo-triangular grip, you can see here that this one almost has a pure triangular grip. It's slightly rounded. I'm sure there's probably a name for a rounded triangle, but you get the idea. And this one certainly forces your grip into a specific position. There's not much variance that you can have in here. So if you have a non-traditional grip, then this might not work for you, but it works fine for me. And would I like all of my pens to have a grip like this? No. But I think that this particular pen, which is triangular in nature to begin with, I feel that it's appropriate. It wouldn't have looked right if it would have had a circular section on it or something along those lines. I think that having the triangular section keeps true to the rest of the pen, and I really enjoy it. Sometimes it's cool to have patterning on the section, and one of my favorites in my collection is the Tassia Miyabi Summer Shimmer. This has a really cool urushi lacquer design on it. I almost think it looks like the bark of a tree. And on the section, it's extended onto the section. And these black lines are slightly raised, and so it's even slightly raised on the section. And so when you are gripping it, it really helps you maintain your grip because those lines really help you grip onto the section here. So I think that I like the fact that this section is colored. I think it looks better than if it was just black or maybe even solid yellow. I like the fact that the pattern is extended onto there, and just think that it makes for an overall excellent design choice. Coming in at number 4, I have 3 examples that are fairly similar from the same manufacturer. That would be Macvicar Knives and Tools, and those would be the torpedoes. This is one of the torpedoes, and what's cool about this is each of these little indentations are filled, and it just looks really cool. This is a titanium pen, and then this is what the section looks like, that the pattern is extended onto the section. Now, overall, this is a little bit thinner than I care for, but I just really think that the coloring as well as the dimpling on this section make it look fantastic. And you might think that that looks uncomfortable, that it's just a big bumpy surface, and it is a big bumpy surface, but it is comfortable, and that it's not uncomfortable with all of the bumps, and it's not forcing your grip into a particular place, and that I think overall it looks really nice. And then as comparison, here is another torpedo, and this is with the Moco TI. And again, it has that same dimpling on there, but with the unique Moco TI pattern on there. There's even some mother of pearl that is around the roll stop, but you can see that this one is similar as well. And both of these pens were ones that I purchased, and I actually had him make this section slightly thicker, just because I didn't want it to be quite as thin as the other model, which was kind of the standard length. And it even has a cool hole there for the ink window. So this is a really cool and unique pen. And finally, from Macvicar Knives, we have something I recently reviewed, which is the Short. And the Short, again, has the dimples here, but then on the section, let me just go ahead and post it here. Again, it has kind of a wavy design in regard to these dimples and a couple of different colors there. And so this is more of a traditional section in the fact that it's not really bumpy, that it feels a little bit more circular, but then with the dimples there, that really gives you a good surface to hold on to. So yeah, once that's in your hand, that is not going anywhere. And then this was an interesting titanium nib as well. So anything from Macvicar Knives is usually very unique and very interesting and high quality craftsmanship. Next up, I have 2 pens that I will categorize together as shimmery sections. The first one is the Mr. Cypress Eggshell. This is eggshell number 9. And this is a combination of having some eggshell here, but then there is some rodden that is here on the section. And I think that it just looks really cool here to have that shimmery section. And I like it better than if the eggshell was extended onto here, because the eggshell could potentially have a bit of texture to it. It might be difficult to adhere that to more of a curved surface like that. And I just think that it accentuates this pen, having the eggshell and then having the rodden that is there on the end there. And I like that. I like the shape of this section. It's a bit on the shorter side, but the combination of the way this section looks as well as the eggshell and then the comfort of it makes it very high on my list. And then in regard to another shimmery section, it is from Palisades, and this is the Oblique Northern Light. This one has the rodden that is on the outside of this pen, but then it also extends to the section and extends onto there. And it's not quite as thick as on the Mr. Cypress, but then on this section is where we actually have the signature of the artist and the limited edition number as well. On this particular pen, I think that that works because I just wouldn't want to interrupt the design on the rest of the pen. So where else are you going to put that signature? And I like the fact that it's on the bottom, so you're really not going to see it when you write. Not that I wouldn't mind seeing it, but it looks a little bit on the bottom. It's just kind of hidden there, but I still like that it's there and that you can see it on a regular basis. Okay, next up is number 6. I have 2 examples of this section. They're both from Leonardo, and they're what I describe as Leonardo's ergonomic section. And the first one is on my Figboot on pens. This is a Momento Zero Grande, and this is in the Carolina Midnight color. And this is what the section looks like. So it's straight and then angles up and then it's straight again. And I kind of call it, like I said, the ergonomic section because it does feel very ergonomic in the hand. You traditionally are gripping in this smaller front portion, but it really follows the curvature of my fingers. So even though you might look at that and say, oh, that's kind of a small section right there to be gripping it, you're really gripping it on this entire section. And that it is very comfortable in the hand and something that I really enjoy. And I was really pleased with the way that this Carolina Midnight material from Jonathan Brooks turned out. This was one of my more popular models I released, and I was really happy with the way that turned out. And then this is what the same section looks like, and this is on a Fiore Grande, and you can see that same section here. This one has the metal on the end. I guess the other one has the metal on the end as well. Yes, it does, but it's just black. But this has the gold on the end, and you can see it a little bit better, but it still has that angle down and the straight portions. And like I said, it's just really comfortable in the hand, and I feel like it's very ergonomic. Next up on the list is a pen that might have been the impetus for this video, because whenever I show it, I have a tendency to always mention how much I like the section and say that, hey, if I ever do a video on sections, then this will certainly be on the list. So it's on the list, and that would be the Monty Winfield High Water. This is a really cool pen that has some carbon fiber, some wound carbon fiber on the top, as well as micarta on the bottom. And this entire pen is handcrafted. But what I love is this section. It is a metal section, but then it is basically grooved in with some jewelry tools. That the gentleman behind Monty Winfield has a background in making jewelry. He also does some outstanding nib work as well. But I just always thought that that looked really cool because it's unique. It's unique because it's one of a kind, and I kind of like the texture aspect of that. And having that texture here, even if it didn't have this texture, with the swale, I feel it would be comfortable. But with that texture there, it's not a huge grippy section, but it just adds a little bit of grippiness to it to where it makes it very comfortable to use. And I think visually, it's just one of my favorite visual sections to look at. And on top of that, I really enjoy the pen as well. That Monty Winfield comes out with some fantastic offerings. Okay, 3 more sections to go. And in this one, I have a couple of different examples. I'm calling this category grooved sections. And the first example is from Shiobi North, and that is the Cthulhu that I recently reviewed. I just love this pen. I love the metalwork on the outside of it. Ruth, who is the woman behind Shiobi North, does some outstanding work, but with this section, you can see that it is grooved there. And that with this, it really is a grippy section. So once you get your grip on there, it is going absolutely nowhere. And that I like the additional tactile feeling of it and the grooves there. I'd say this is on the thicker side of grooves, but it is very comfortable. And I like the fact that it adds that extra tactile feeling and isn't too visually different than the rest of the pen. But in regard to a couple of other examples, I have one that I recently reviewed from Good Made Better. This is the Muse, and this is a much lower groove, or let's say less thick groove, and so that it's a little bit more on the mild side, but yet still does a good job of helping you grip this brass section. And that I think that it does a good job of just adding a little bit of visual element to it, as well as providing just a little bit more of grip to that section as well. Plus, I think it looks nice. This was just a fantastic pen that the Kickstarter went really well for it, but I love the exterior texture of this, he actually engraves this all by hand. So every single pen is going to be unique and different. Here's an example of a tactile turn gist. Tactile turn right now is not manufacturing fountain pens, but they did a good job with a number that they produced, and hopefully one day they'll get back to it. But this one has some Damascus steel on there, and you can see the patterning that is on that section, and you can see the tip there, and then on the section it has the same Damascus steel, and that I think again it has the group between the grooves as well as the Damascus steel. It just has a unique look that is different than any other pen I have in my collection. So with these grooves, I'd say it's a medium-sized groove. Your grip is really going nowhere, even though it, for the most part, it just angles straight down. If it didn't have those grooves, it would be very slick and you just slide right off. But with the grooves, it makes it very comfortable and very usable, and I just love that Damascus. The next example is from Enso, and that would be the Italia. Again, this is a metal section, and this is just, we'll say, just barely grooved. It just has it might even be hard to see there, but just minuscule grooving on there, but just enough so that it provides you just a little bit of grip. Because again, if it was a slick metal section like this, you have a little bit of engraving on the end that might help you out, but it might not be that comfortable, but just a little bit of grooving goes a long way on this particular pen. And finally, in the grooved sections, we have something from Mont Blanc, which is the Star Walker. This was in the Ultra Black. And this one, rather than the grooves going one direction, we have them going the other direction. And I think that they still serve the same purpose. Even though this isn't a very long section, I think that having those grooves there makes it significantly more usable than if there was no grooves there at all. But it's an example how the grooves don't necessarily need to go around the section. They can go up and down the length of the section and still serve the same purpose. Two more areas to go. I have a couple examples in this one, and these would be large pens. And the first one is the Namiki Emperor. And to see how you can handle a large nib or a section on a large pen in a couple of different ways. For this particular pen, it maintains a rather large size appropriate section. So it angles down slightly. This is a very large, almost comically large pen, and the nib is just one of the most beautiful ones. It's just an amazing looking nib. But I find that the section is extremely comfortable to use, and even though this is just a large pen with a huge nib, it's very usable and writes almost just like a normal medium nib. It doesn't write like some comically large thing, but I find this thick section to be very comfortable and size appropriate for this particular pen. But some large pens handle it a little bit differently. Here is the Edison Collier Grande, and this is a fairly large pen, but you can see how this tapers down a little bit more, and so that the section is a more, we'll call it standard size, but I feel that the way that this stair steps down and angles down, it doesn't have an appearance that there's not too much of a stark transition from and decline in elevation from the barrel down here to the section. Again, I find it very comfortable to use. This swale and the smaller section kind of force your grip to go into that particular area, so there's not a lot of variety you can have there. But while it's still on the larger side in regard to sections, it's just a different way that this larger pen has handled that situation. In regard to one of the largest pens in my collection, this is the Danny Trio Genkai. Again, this is a very large pen, and similar to the Namiki, it has a somewhat large section. I'd say it's between the Edison and the Namiki, so it's a little bit narrower than the Namiki is, but it's still very comfortable. And it's just slightly more narrow than the barrel, but it has a nice rounded transition and a couple of step downs, so it doesn't look out of place. And again, this is just one of my favorite nibs. I think that stamping is just so cool. And finally in this section, we have a pen that is a little bit smaller, but has a very large section, and that would be the Delta Dolce Vita Oversize. And so this is the oversize, which is kind of a standard size pen, but the oversize they're talking about is the thickness. You can see here how large that section is. This section here is pretty much almost as large, if not larger, than the one that you find on the Emperor, and the Emperor is almost twice the size of this particular pen. But I do like thick sections, and so this one is really getting towards the edge of looking a little bit odd. Even though this is a fairly large nib on here, it almost looks a little bit out of place. If it would have had like a number 8 nib on here as opposed to a 6, maybe it would have looked a little bit nicer as far as size appropriate. But overall, I really enjoy that. And then just so you can compare, this is what it looks like compared to a standard Dolce Vita model. So the standard, let me see if you can really see how the difference in there. Yeah, so you can see how the standard one compares to the oversize, to where they're roughly, the pens are roughly the exact same size. And so when it comes to oversize, it's really talking about the section and the size of the section. But I love both of these pens. Okay, last section here, and this would be the Sailor King of Pen. And I have a couple of different examples here of that. First up, we have the King of Pen Ebonite. This one was bedazzled by Bokumondo in Japan. I have a whole video on this pen if you'd like to learn how this application was made. It was a fantastic process, and I am very thrilled to have had it done by an extremely talented artisan. This pen began its life as a solid black pen before it was subsequently bedazzled. But the King of Pen section is a little bit on the thicker side. It's not extraordinarily long, but I feel it's size appropriate, and it just fits really well in my hand. I like the fact it's just a little bit thicker, and I feel that in regard to the overall size of the pen, it works well, and it just feels really comfortable with this very narrow swale and on the end and edge. I feel it just works really, really well. And so you can see this very same section on a couple of different pens. This is a classic pen, LB5, which in a way is just a version of a King of Pen, and it has that very same section on here. Now the body is a little bit longer than a King of Pen, but this whole section and then the section housing is a King of Pen section. So that's exactly what it looks like on the classic pens LB5. And then finally, this is what it looks like on the King of Pen Pro Gear. And this one is called the Sky. And this one is made from a translucent blue resin. And again, we have that same shape, and it has the ridge at the top, and it just angles up slightly. But overall, even though this pen is a little bit shorter than the other ones, I still feel that it's size appropriate and very, very comfortable and just fits my hand really, really nice. Okay, so there's a look at some of my favorite sections in my collection. Maybe in the comments below, let me know what sections are some of your favorites, ones that really work well for you. I'd be interested to hear about the ones that you love. Okay, until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.